What is up, everybody? Welcome to another recap video here on Touchline Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content I put out every single week on YouTube. All about the Nations League here today, both Concacaf and UEFA, starting with the U.S. men's national team defending its Concacaf Nations League title, beating Canada 2-0 in the final. I'm going to keep this pretty brief. I only have a couple points I want to hit on, but the first of them is simply how good these two performances were, and again, the improvement that has gone on in this team under Greg Berhalter. Whether you want to credit him or not, you have to acknowledge how far this team has come from 2018 to now. The way they demolished Mexico, another pretty comprehensive performance in this final against Canada. Nowhere near as good of a performance, but they still were in control of the game, never were particularly bothered, and did so without Serginho Dest and Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams. That's pretty impressive. The second thing is I have been somebody who has never been convinced that Gio Reyna has to be part of the starting 11. Even through the World Cup, I believed there was a strong argument that your best option is to play the other three midfielders and bring Reyna in off the bench as your difference maker, your super sub, your guy who can change the game, like he does for Borussia Dortmund. And I am somebody just fundamentally who does not believe your best 11 is always your best 11 players. Because there's no doubt that Gio Reyna is one of the 11 best players on this team just from a pure talent standpoint. But the question is, how do they fit together and navigating 90 minutes when you know you're going to make subs? The pressing ability of Brendan Aronson, the technical ability of Weston McKennie. You're obviously not taking Tyler Adams out. To me, Yunus Musa is also undroppable at this point. And so are you taking Tim Weah out? I mean, to me, there is just what was a really strong case. And I get why Berhalter didn't start Reyna. To me, that was completely justifiable. Now, there's also an argument he should have started. 100% people can disagree with that. But to me, it was not a ridiculous approach to take. I will defend Berhalter on that. Gio Reyna's made me a believer, though. What he did in that final game for Dortmund, almost rescuing the Bundesliga single-handedly, and what he did in the 3 halves he played in this tournament here, to me, the best version of this team is Reyna playing as the 10 underneath that front 3. And then, to me, that means you're dropping Weston McKennie. Not that McKennie did anything to deserve to be dropped necessarily, but I already mentioned I consider Musa and Adams undroppable. And so you have this very good and difficult decision to make where you have 4 starting caliber midfielders. And you could put Gio Reyna up top, so you also have, 4 starting caliber attackers. And we're not even talking about Brendan Aronson. But to me, with what Reyna did, and if you want to throw a criticism at this team from the World Cup, it was the lack of finishing, some of the lack of creativity, all that stuff that Gio Reyna is providing you. He gives you something that nobody else on this team does. And to me, he is much better playing in the middle of the field than he is out wide. I really think BJ Callahan figured something out here and that Berhalter has to take this and run with it. Now, the question is, are you ever going to get all 4 of these midfielders healthy to the point where you actually have to make a decision? Because obviously Adams missed these games, so you got to start all 3 of those guys without any issue until McKennie got suspended. But Gio Reyna has changed my mind. He was that good, that dynamic, that much of a difference maker. The final thing I want to harp on, And this is going to be important heading into Greg Berhalter 2.0 here. I made this point heading into the World Cup, and I have been 100% justified in it. This team is not built to play in Concacaf. This team is built to play in major tournaments against better opposition. And here's what I mean by that. The talent discrepancy between this team and everybody else in CONCACAF. Mexico doesn't have the firepower. Canada doesn't have the depth. Yes, Canada's top, I still argue, top 3 players are better than the U.S.'s. But after that, it drops off significantly, where the U.S. has, 7, 8, 9 of those guys. Nobody can match them talent-wise. That's become abundantly clear. And so, more than any other team, opponents are going to look at the U.S. and say, we got to stop them from playing. And you get the bizarreness of CONCACAF, people kicking Pulisic and Reyna around the field because they can't let them actually hurt them. All that stuff. It is not conducive to what this team does. And this is also a team, Berhalter does want to have possession and control games, at least through pressing. Right, maybe not necessarily a Pep Guardiola expansive system, but wants to be on the front foot and dictating the terms of the game. All that stuff is difficult to do in qualifying when teams are coming in and parking the bus and trying to make it ugly. You can have all the possession you want. It doesn't mean the game's actually going the way you want and you're creating the chances you want. Where this team is at its best is when these incredibly gifted players actually get to put it on display. And when have you seen that happen? Concacaf Nations League, once you get through the group stage, when you're playing the better teams in CONCACAF that'll actually play with you, Canada, Mexico, and the World Cup. And this group, if you start with the knockout stage of the first Nations League, because qualifying was weird, there was a strange collection of players in and out of that lineup. I mean, I still remember that awful loss to Canada in the group stage, but Michael Bradley and Daniel Lovett started that game. You can't really apply that to this group. You felt like the beginning was the thrilling win over Mexico to win the first Nations League, and then you go World Cup and this tournament. Gold Cup doesn't count because this A squad wasn't playing in it. Haven't lost to a CONCACAF team. The only team they've lost to is Netherlands in the round of 16. Not an accident. And so, as we're talking about Berhalter again, one of the important things to put into context is what qualifying is and what this team ended up being. Because it's easy to, and I had plenty of criticism for Berhalter during qualifying too. There were things he could have done better, absolutely. The way he framed that loss to Canada, to me, was ridiculous. But at the end of the day, you just need to get through it because it is not what you see at a major tournament. Because the teams aren't anywhere near as good. And this team is built to play for maybe the first time ever with the best of the best. That's what these guys get every day in training and every time they take the field in these top European leagues. And so, yeah, Canada won qualifying. Mexico was right there. The U.S. finished third. And who is clearly the best team in this region? It's the U.S. Because you don't evaluate it on your ability to go to El Salvador or Honduras and get 3 points. That's not what you're doing. You're just getting enough to get to the tournament where things even out a little bit and you actually get to play against higher level competition and play a more traditional kind of European-based game. This is not a CONCACAF team. They play in CONCACAF, but this collection of players are not CONCACAF guys. And that's a testament to their talent and where they have gotten in their careers. And so it means when they get to actually play, that's when they show you just what they're capable of. So don't put, and I said this going into the World Cup, don't put too much stock in those qualifying performances. It's a completely different ballgame. This team is at its best when it matters most, and that is really exciting moving forward when you're talking about a Copa America and a World Cup in 2026. You've got 3 tournaments of evidence now to show the difference between this team in a tournament against high level opposition and this team navigating the ups and downs and travel of and bizarreness of CONCACAF qualifying. People do not give enough credit to how difficult qualifying in CONCACAF is and the specific set of skills it takes. At the end of the day, you are just trying to survive. This team did, and then they looked way better than everybody else from CONCACAF in the World Cup. Not an accident, not a coincidence. There is a reason why this is playing out the way it has. And then, of course, there was another Nations League final taking place in UEFA, Spain beating Croatia on penalties. Interesting game, not the most thrilling game in the world, but both teams did create chances, really well balanced. And even coming in, Spain was very much of the belief, we got to try and end this in 90 minutes. They kept talking about that on the broadcast. No interest in going to extra time and penalties against this Croatia team. And they can't achieve their goal. It goes to extra time. Again, some opportunities for both teams, and then it goes to penalties. But it's Spain that prevails. Unai Simon comes up with a couple big saves. He makes the one save. Aymeric Laporte fires what would have been the winning penalty off of the woodwork. Simon delivers another save. And then you get your Panenka from Dani Carvajal to win it. So really, Spain, the only shortcoming or mistake in the penalty shootout that hurt Spain was inflicted by Aymeric Laporte. I didn't phrase that very well. You know what I'm getting at, though. It's not like they even had a penalty saved. They were really, really good outside of that one penalty. And they came right back in the 6th round of the shootout and got the job done. And so the story here is basically Spain beating Croatia at their game. All of this talk about Croatia and how good they've been on penalties and how good they've been in these situations, and Spain, not the best history in these situations, but it all turns around in this game because you just never know. And the other part of this is kind of the legacy of it. And again, this idea that the more trophies you create and the more that these teams give them significance, the more entertaining and more special this becomes. And the more opportunities teams, clubs, countries have to win trophies that maybe don't get that opportunity all that often. And in UEFA, who knows with this tournament? It's been some interesting results in Nations League that don't line up with the Euros and don't line up with the World Cup. There are so many teams that on any given year can find themselves in this position. And so why not make this competitive and add some intrigue to it? And so this Croatia team, as good as they've been in these World Cups and have come so close to the ultimate prize, this was the chance and probably the last chance at the trophy. Now, going to have another run at the Euros, so there's always that opportunity. But this was there for the taking, to finally have a tangible thing to point to for this fantastic era and these fantastic players. And on the Spain side, you've seen these different countries have success in various ways, and Spain haven't really been a huge part of that. Italy missed the World Cup, but Italy also has a Euro that they won. And Spain have just kind of been around, but you never really viewed them as the favorites, and they had a good Euro, but didn't get where they wanted to be. And now, again, something tangible to point to, and learning about this process of winning for these young players that are going to eventually inherit this. Because Spain's in this really weird spot where it's half of the old guard and all of these teenagers, right? Your Pedris, your Xavis, the next era of all these really, really promising young players. But you don't have a lot of key guys that are, 27 right now. And so trying to pass that knowledge on. I'm a big believer in the process of winning. Still trying to figure out exactly what significance to place on this trophy. But clearly these countries cared about it. That's a good thing. And Spain ultimately come out on top and deny Croatia that trophy they have been chasing and come so close to have come so close to getting on those couple occasions before. But it is Spain who prevail. So congratulations to Spain. Congratulations to the U.S. Men Nations League champions in their respective regions. That is all for this recap video. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. I'll see you next time.